Former Olympian charged in shooting that left woman with multiple gunshot wounds at equestrian facility. Why would he do this? Let's talk about it. This is Criminal Justice Corner, where we discuss true crime stories. We give the real details surrounding what occurred, and just in case you find yourself in the same situation, we give you actionable advice and tips on how you can potentially get yourself out. I'm Dr. Jennifer Matthews, the host of the Criminal Justice Corner. I have 16 years of experience in the field of criminal justice and a doctoral degree in criminal justice. I'm also an expert in video evidence. Today I have with me a special guest, Tori Houseworth. Ms. Houseworth is a police officer out of Northwest Indiana, a crime analyst, and instructor of criminal justice. Tori, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Hi. Prior to moving to Northwest Indiana, I was a federal police officer and I am glad to be here.
Tori, I appreciate you for being my special guest today. Let's dive into this episode. In the spring of 2018, 58-year-old former Olympic equestrian Michael Barisone owned two horse farms, one outside Palm Beach and the other in prime New Jersey country. He called it Hawthorne Hill. For those who might not know, an equestrian is a person who rides horses. In March of 2018, Lauren Kanarick began training at Hawthorne Hill with Barrison. Kanarick had her own equestrian dreams and was paying $5,000 a month to train, board her horses there, and live in a farmhouse on Barrison's property. For Kanarick, it seemed like a good arrangement, a riding student being trained by one of the masters in the sport. Fast forward a bit to summer of 2019. The arrangement that started out good began to sour and would soon become explosive. Staff members at Hawthorne Hill reported that the working relationship between Kanarick and Barrison took a turn for the worse when Kanarick wanted more coaching directly from Barrison, not his assistant trainers. Now, to be very transparent, there were two other very elite trainers and well qualified trainers. One was a male, and the other was a female who happened to be the companion of Barrison. Tori, what are your thoughts at this point?
So I think that it's a situation to where if she didn't want to be trained by the two other elite trainers, it should have started off with a very simple conversation. I see this as very simple.
I 150% agree. I think she's paying a lot of money, so definitely her concerns should have been heard. And I don't think that any, teacher would be opposed to having a conversation with their student about their concerns.
I agree.
Now, Canaric, an active user of social media, began posting her complaints instead of talking now, posting her complaints on Facebook. On July 25th, 2019, Canaric posted, "It's about time to possibly go to war. Anyone who repeatedly kicks a resting beast will eventually wake her up." In another post, she describes Barrison as racist, homophobic, and anti Semitic. Now, these allegations, Barrison passionately denies. Now, what do you think about her post, Tori?
I think that's definitely going off the deep end. And I also think it's a sign that she definitely lacks maturity and emotional intelligence because why do you have to go off on the deep end?
Yeah, and then she describes herself as a beast. Like, that's harsh. I think that's really harsh. Like, why are you going to that extreme over something so simple? I mean, just because you want him to train you one on one, and let's just say he read that post and he wanted to do that, I would kind of be intimidated at that point to even be around you one on one because I don't know what you're capable of.
Absolutely. And to me, there's only one way that you can look at that in context. When you describe yourself as a beast, to me that tells me like, okay, I need to be concerned about your temper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Barrison later claimed that there were things coming out on social media that were horrific. He said he was frightened and unnerved by Lauren's posts. And he said, I remember complete and total panic. He said, everybody says I was unglued, and I was unglued. Now he has supporters, and they say that the posts were unfair, and they damaged his reputation. And he was also worried about them ruining his business, and I would say rightfully so. If he's running a business and you have potential clients out there seeing these posts, they would definitely think twice, because if I saw that, I would be like, "What's going on over there, Hawthorne Hill?" And then Barrison also claimed that he asked Canarick and her boyfriend, Rob Goodwin, to leave his property, but he says they refused. Barrison called 911 four times asking for assistance and telling cops that he was in fear for his our lives, our meaning him and his girlfriend Mary Haskins. This is a situation and it's getting worse and worse and worse. The police have been here twice in the last 3 days. They are nuts. They're stalking us. They're harassing us. And last night, there was a Facebook post, but police may have viewed it as nothing more than a landlord tenant dispute. So I feel like he's crying out for help. Yes, the police may have showed up and felt like it was a landlord tenant dispute, but to me, the Facebook posts are somewhat threatening. And if he's asking for help, I don't know what the proper recourse could have been, but I definitely think the police should have done more instead of just saying it's a landlord tenant dispute. What do you think, Tori?
I certainly agree. And I think when you look at this case as a whole, there were, I would say, some mistakes that were made and some loopholes that were missed. And when you look at her posts, they're definitely defaming. And
Definitely.
someone with kids, per se, who may want to consider training, when you see something like that, you are going to give second thought. You're going to run from um, things that are being said that's horrifying like that. And I think at the end of the day, yes, everyone has the right to freedom of speech, but when you start putting things out there about someone that's in Michael's position, then yes, you are getting on the defame track, and it is becoming more of a civil lawsuit on those terms.
And then something that I definitely want to point out is that there were never any reports that I found that shows he retaliated against them other than asking them to leave. And in my opinion, that's something reasonable. If you're living in my home, if you're, living on my property and I'm asking you to leave, that's reasonable. That's like
I certainly agree, and I think also um I think that she's the antagonist in this situation too, because she confessed and confirmed on social media and to the court that her and her boyfriend's intent was to destroy him. They specifically used those words.
it was alleged that Lauren hid voice recording devices in the barn where the horses were housed. Another post from Lauren read, a 6'3", a 6'3" man was bullying her and she was fearful for her life. Wouldn't this say they never saw this? My question is, if it were true, why didn't she call the police or tell her boyfriend with whom she lived with on the property? Tori, what are your thoughts about this?
I think she definitely should have reached out to the police if it was that big of a deal, um, and dealt with it like that.
Right. So I think the lack of that tells me that there was not a whole truth to it. Maybe it was her truth, but maybe it wasn't 100% truth to it.
Definitely. And you know, there's different forms of bullying. So to me, my question is too, what how does she describe bullying? What is her definition of bullying? And I think it was more of an attention grab to get people to start feeding into it.
And I can definitely see that. So you're saying maybe she was an attention seeker at that point?
Yes. Throughout a lot
Okay.
of
Because
this.
you said what? I'm sorry.
I think she was an attention seeker throughout a lot of this case.
And I can definitely see that because the words she was using. Like we said, she was using beast, and she was using, 6'3" man, and not using his name, but we could definitely tell who she was talking about. That type of stuff.
Absolutely. And at
It was
one point she describes herself as a badass as well.
exactly. So if you're all these things, ha- are you not saying that you can't be bullied if you're that, but you're not going to the police. So are you truly fearful? Is my question. Not saying she isn't, but how fearful are you?
Exactly.
Yeah. So at this point, Barrison says he felt unsafe in his own home. He says living under the same roof as Lauren and Rob Goodwin became impossible. Barrison and Haskins moved out of the farmhouse. Her daughter was away at camp, and now her son was sent back to his dad. Now, this had to be devastating for Mary Haskins to have to send her son away due to the tension that was brewing in a place that she called home. Michael Barrison said his paradise that he built had turned to hell. While all of this is going on, Canaric is still making Facebook posts. One of her posts at this time read, "Everyone should be worried. I'm not responsible for anything my other personalities do when they're threatened." Another post read that um, every time Barrison said he saw a post, he was calling the police. It was reported to local cops that they would come over to the place, but again, they felt like it was a landlord tenant dispute. What do you think, Tori, about all of this?
I think it's both. I think you have a situation to where, okay, you have a landlord tenant dispute because he does want her gone, and I think it's also an issue to where, okay, this is escalating. So I think at that point the police should have started digging further. And I think also on Canaric's half, why are you setting up recording devices? Why are you secretly recording conversations? What is your motive in that? Especially if you say you're the victim.
Exactly. And I feel like Barrison's hands are tied at this point. He can't get any help from the police. He can't even live in his home that he built. And so at this point, I'm feeling like he should have pursued an order of protection or even the assistance of an attorney to see what remedies he could find or seek out from the law at this point. And again, while all this is going on, she's still coming up with posts to words to say on Facebook. So another post that she posted said, "All my moves against them have been planned for months. Everything I've done to them so far has been child's play." Now, to me, that definitely sounds like a threat. And then, next thing you know, a caseworker from the New Jersey Department of Children and Families shows up to the home of Mary and Michael, inquiring about the well being of Mary's children. The department had received a complaint filed by Lauren Canarick. She alleged bullying by Michael and Mary, so they were there to investigate. The children, as we already know, were already sent away for safety purposes, but the allegation was still there, so the department still had to come out for a visit. Now, what are you thinking about this, Tori?
I think that's a bit much, and I think it's still biased, but it happens. I'm not
Absolutely.
surprised.
Yeah, now I definitely am okay with the department coming out to do a well-being check on the children. I'm always an advocate for children in any circumstance, but I think it was an extreme on Lauren's part to imply that the children were in danger because no one ever saw any harm being done to the children. No one ever implied that there was harm being done to the children. So to even imply that there was some harm being done to the children, I think is extreme. Now, if she had proof of something like that, then that's fine. And if she was only alleging bullying by Mary and Michael, that's one thing. But to imply something was being done to the children erroneously, I think that's a very extreme and wrong.
And
To
that's why
even
I agree,
go
and
ahead.
that's why I was saying I think it's a bit much, and I think it's just malicious intent on her behalf.
Exactly. And it's clear that she was trying to ruin not just his reputation, but hers as well. So Mary, not I don't know what her relationship was with Lauren, but she's trying to ruin Mary's reputation too. And for what? Just because you want Michael to solely train you? I mean, this is petty at its worst.
Absolutely. And there was also discussions that she had with her father, Lauren had with her father, about suing him. So that's the part that baffles me about this entire situation is if your intent was to really sue him and deal with it in that way, why not just go that route? Why do you have to antagonize him?
Exactly. Because where would that get you?
Exactly.
Now, as you can already predict, tensions at Hawthorne Hill were boiling over. On August 7th, 2019, while that social worker from the family services was there and Mary was there, Michael took a gun from a safe in his office and drove his truck down the long gravel driveway to the farmhouse where Canerick and Goodwin were living. Now, what happens next still remains unclear to this very day. But at 2:13 p.m., Lauren Canerick managed to call 911 while bleeding heavily from two gunshot wounds. During the phone call, Rob Goodwin can be heard wrestling and subduing Michael Barrison. When police arrived, they found Goodwin on top of a badly beaten Barrison. The 9mm gun was by Barrison's hand. Lauren was lying flat on her back in critical condition. She was transported to a hospital for emergency surgery. The next day, Barrison was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder. He was facing 80 years in prison. Tori, do you think he snapped?
So, and that's the question of the day. Um, I'm gonna say no, and
Okay.
here's why. I think at the end of the day, the question is what really happened at that scene. Just
Okay.
because Michael showed up at the farmhouse doesn't mean that he had intent to kill. He could have showed
Okay.
up, have a very civil conversation, and there's so many theories that you can put behind that entire crime scene, but to me the evidence does not say that he snapped because it's not fully confirmed that he's the one who fired the gun. They never did any gunshot residue testing on him or the other two who was at the scene, Goodwin or our Lauren. They never did any testing with them, so we really don't know if Michael fired that gun.
And that is something to bring to light because Michael definitely said has claimed that he does not remember the events that happened at the point after he grabbed that gun. So that is definitely something to bring to light.
Exactly. Or were they all fighting over the gun and it just so happened to where she got shot in the chest, you know?
That's definitely possible. However, he was charged and he was jailed for over 2 years until spring of 2022 when his trial finally began. The salacious trial went on for almost 3 weeks. Michael pleaded not guilty by way of insanity. The defense team hired mental health experts to bolster their claims that Barrison had in fact been temporarily insane. He implied she drove him crazy. Well, I'm sorry, the doctor implied she drove him crazy. She gaslighted him and she drove him over the edge. Now, this doctor is Dr. Steven Simmering. Now, Tori, do you think he could have possibly been temporarily insane?
Definitely. And he could have possibly snapped. He very well could have possibly snapped. And I'll say from just being a human being, you know, things like that will make you want to do something to someone, because at what point do you feel like okay, you've exhausted all options? I've called the police, I've reached out to the police, they won't help. And I understand, being a police officer myself, that when you get those civil situations, civil disputes, your hands do become tied because you can potentially be sued if you try to pursue some sort of action that that's criminal that doesn't exist. But at the end of the day, I still think Lauren is the antagonist. I think she is the aggressor and she escalated this entire situation.
Now, I'm definitely going to say, like I always say, she stirred the pot in this one. She definitely stirred that pot. She had her spoon, she had her cauldron, and she was just stirring that pot from the beginning. I'll definitely agree with that. Now, the jury in this case deliberated for 4 days. They came back with a dramatic and possibly unexpected verdict. Michael Barrison was not guilty by reason of insanity. He was not criminally responsible for his actions that afternoon at Hawthorne Hill. Overcome by emotion, Barrison collapsed, weeping into his attorney's arms. His defense team rejoiced, calling it justice. After a few weeks, Barrison was transferred to a psychiatric facility. Lauren Canary's father, Jonathan Canary, believes the jury got it all wrong and that Barrison should spend the rest of his life in prison. He adds that Lauren was shocked and dismayed by the verdict. Lauren has not given up her efforts to hold Barrison accountable and has hired a civil attorney to sue Barrison on her behalf. Tori, what is your take on this?
So I think that if she feels like she's really a victim, go ahead and proceed with the lawsuit. But at the end of the day, I think that the outcome of the case was fair.
I definitely have to agree. I definitely think that the outcome of the case was fair. And we know that he's going to be in a facility where he'll get the help that he needs. So I definitely think justice was served in this case. With that being said, let's give the listeners some takeaways. And my first takeaway is going to be that if you have a dispute with someone, that you talk it out. You talk it out the best way you can. You schedule a meeting, you try to work things out with them and not post on social media. Social media does not do anyone any good in this type of situation. If you're having an argument, if you're having a disagreement, social media is not your friend. So I would say that is the last thing you want to do when you're disagreeing with a person. Do not go to social media. What do you think, Tori? What are your takeaways?
Absolutely. I agree 100% with you on that. And what I'm going to say to add on to yours is that we all have the right to freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean that it's okay to exercise it on social media by defaming someone. So, yes, you can say certain things, but it can also land you in civil court. And I think when she pursues that lawsuit, I think some of those things that she said and posted is going to come back to hunt her. And
And yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say as it should.
As it definitely should. And I think also another takeaway is be mindful. Because when you think about Michael and the weapon in this case, be mindful of how prosecutors and law enforcement can shape a case and use that evidence against you because just because he had a weapon on him doesn't mean that it was his intent to kill or to even use it for that matter. And as I said before, we don't know what what truly happened at that scene. We were not there. Only
True.
the four individuals were there. But at the end of the day, be mindful of how um, you being a law-abiding citizen that carries a weapon legally, how it can still be used against you.
Absolutely. I definitely think those are good takeaways. Now, you can find me, your host, Dr. Jennifer Matthews, on Instagram at Dr. Jennifer Matthews and the podcast at Criminal Justice Corner. Please comment, like, subscribe, and share. Tell a friend to tell a friend about Criminal Justice Corner. I will see you next time on Criminal Justice Corner podcast. New episodes are posted every Wednesday. Thank you for listening.